Leo Martinez had long since stopped noticing the whispers. They followed him through the iridescent hallways of Galactic Apex Academy, like persistent shadows, sometimes hushed, sometimes deliberately loud enough for him to hear. Human. Primitive. Dirt walker. The insults had become as mundane as the daily atmospheric adjustments that kept the school's diverse species comfortable. Being the only human in an interstellar academy designed to cultivate the future leaders of the Galactic Alliance meant isolation was his constant companion. Today was no different as Leo clutched his worn-out biodiversity encyclopedia tighter against his chest. His thin frame moved with practiced efficiency. Head down, shoulders hunched, footsteps quiet, the posture of someone trying to occupy as little space as possible in a world that constantly reminded him he didn't belong. Leo had been invited to attend the academy as part of what the Alliance euphemistically called their Emerging Species Integration Initiative. In reality, it was a patronizing gesture following Earth's reluctant admission to the galactic community, a token placement that everyone, including the school administration, viewed with skepticism at best and contempt at worst. Look, it's trying to absorb knowledge through physical contact again. A melodious voice trilled as Leo passed a group of Lamidians, their translucent skin pulsing with derisive light patterns. Leo recognized the speaker as Thelix, self-appointed ringleader of the more vocal anti-human contingent. The Lamidians erupted in crystalline laughter, their bodies briefly merging into a single pulsating mass of mockery. Leo kept walking. His fingers traced the embossed title of his book, a habit that indeed did comfort him, though not for the reasons his tormentor suggested. Inside these pages were detailed analyses of evolutionary patterns across 12 galaxies. The book reminded him that adaptation was possible, that survival often came to those who could endure and observe before acting. It was a lesson he clung to daily. The 16-year-old made his way to his usual lunch spot, a secluded corner of the eastern courtyard where the ambient light was too dim for photosynthesizing species and too dry for the aquatic ones. It offered rare moments of solitude in a school designed to encourage constant social interaction among its elite students. The Galactic Alliance prized collaborative leadership above all else, which made Leo's isolation both a punishment and a self-fulfilling prophecy of human inadequacy. Leo unwrapped his meal, a nutritional cube formulated for human biology, and grimaced at the chalky substance that supposedly contained all necessary nutrients in a palatable format. He broke off a piece and chewed mechanically, his mind already drifting to his afternoon classes. Xenobiology was next, the one subject where he occasionally earned reluctant nods of approval. Despite everything, Leo maintained perfect grades. His personal mission had become clear from his first day at the academy. Graduate with honors, return to Earth as living proof that humans could excel even in the most hostile educational environment the Alliance could devise. A soft scratching sound interrupted his thoughts. Leo froze mid-bite, his eyes searching the crystalline foliage that bordered his sanctuary. The plants shimmered with their usual bioluminescence, but something else moved among them, something that didn't belong to the carefully curated ecosystem of the academy grounds. The scratching came again, followed by a weak chirping sound. Cautiously, Leo set down his nutritional cube and leaned forward. The academy strictly prohibited interaction with unauthorized life forms, a rule established after an unfortunate incident involving a Nick student and what they had mistaken for a decorative floating orb, but turned out to be an ambassador from the gaseous realms. "Hello," Leo whispered, feeling slightly foolish. The foliage rustled again, and then a creature no larger than Leo's hand emerged, dragging what appeared to be an injured wing. Leo's breath caught in his throat. The being resembled a reptile, with iridescent scales that shifted between deep azure and emerald. Its elongated snout ended in delicate nostrils that quivered as it scented the air. But most remarkably, despite its small size, it bore the unmistakable characteristics of what humans had mythologized for centuries: a dragon. Of course, Leo knew dragons existed, or had existed, throughout the galaxy. His xenobiology textbook contained brief references to the Draconis species, an ancient race purportedly extinct for millennia or, according to some sources, banished to the farthest reaches of uncharted space. The Academy curriculum dismissed them as a primitive species that had failed to evolve beyond their territorial instincts. A convenient explanation for their absence that Leo had found suspiciously simplistic. The tiny dragon, if that's what it truly was, looked up at Leo with eyes of swirling silver. It seemed terrified, its miniature body trembling with each labored breath. One wing was folded neatly against its back, but the other extended at an awkward angle. The creature couldn't have been more than a hatchling, yet something in those mercurial eyes spoke of awareness beyond what Leo would expect from an infant species. "You're hurt," Leo stated softly, earning a slight head tilt from the creature. Against every Academy regulation and probably several interstellar treaties, Leo broke off a piece of his nutritional cube. "It's not great, but it's food. Are you hungry?" The dragon inched forward, its nostrils flaring as it analyzed the offering. Leo remained perfectly still, hand extended. After what seemed like an eternity, the creature darted forward, snatched the morsel, and retreated several steps before devouring it with surprising delicacy. "There's more if you want," Leo said, breaking off another piece. This time, the dragon approached with less hesitation. As it ate from Leo's palm, he noticed an unusual warmth emanating from the creature. Not the heat of metabolism, but something more profound, as though its tiny body contained energies far greater than its physical form suggested. The sound of the warning bell resonated across the courtyard, signaling 5 minutes until afternoon sessions began. The dragon startled, nearly toppling backward. "It's okay," Leo assured it, though he knew he needed to leave. "I have to go, but—" He hesitated, then placed his remaining nutritional cube on the ground. "You can have a rest. I'll try to come back tomorrow with something better." The dragon chirruped, a sound somehow conveying both gratitude and melancholy. As Leo gathered his belongings, the creature retreated into the foliage, its silver eyes the last to disappear among the crystalline leaves. Leo hurried to his xenobiology class, unaware that he had just initiated a sequence of events that would forever alter the trajectory of not only his life, but potentially the entire Galactic Alliance. Professor Haltran was already projecting three-dimensional cellular structures when Leo slipped into the classroom. The insectoid teacher's compound eyes registered Leo's entrance, but the professor continued without comment. Leo silently thanked the teacher's characteristic indifference. Among the Academy's faculty, Professor Haltran was the least openly dismissive of the human student. Today we examine adaptive biochemical responses in Class 3 evolutionary developments. The professor's mandibles clicked with precision as Leo settled into his designated seat, isolated by 2 empty spaces on either side, as per the comfort zoning requested by several students who claimed human pheromones disturbed their concentration. As holographic cellular structures rotated above the central platform, Leo's thoughts kept returning to the injured dragon. Had found shelter? Was the nutritional cube enough sustenance for its recovery? And most pressingly, what was a supposedly extinct or exiled species doing on the grounds of the Alliance's most prestigious academy? 45 minutes into the lecture, an unusual sensation prickled at the base of Leo's skull, a subtle pressure that quickly intensified into a humming awareness. The air in the classroom seemed to vibrate with invisible energy. Other students shifted uncomfortably, their various sensory adaptations registering the change before any alarm sounded. That happened. The ambient light throughout the academy fluctuated, dimming momentarily before flaring to brilliance. The holographic display above Professor Haltran's podium dissolved into static. Outside the polarized windows, the perpetually regulated sky above the academy darkened, as though a storm had materialized from nowhere. Impossible given the weather control systems. Attention all faculty and students. The disembodied voice of the Academy's AI security system echoed through the building. An unauthorized energy signature has been detected. Please remain in your current locations while the anomaly is investigated. This is not an evacuation scenario. The calm, measured tone of the announcement belied the unprecedented nature of the situation. In its 300-year history, Galactic Apex Academy had never experienced a security breach. The school's location, on a terraformed planetoid at the exact center of Alliance territory, was supposed to be unassailable. Professor Haltron's antennae quivered as the insectoid moved to the window, compound eyes scanning the darkening sky. Most unusual, the professor clicked. The energy signature appears to be. Whatever observation was forthcoming died in the professor's mandibles as the sky split open. There was no other way to describe it. The regulated atmospheric dome above the academy grounds seemed to tear like fabric, revealing not the vacuum of space, but swirling corridors of light, spatial ruptures that shouldn't have been possible within normal physics. Through these rippling gateways, shapes emerged. Dragons. Hundreds of them. Their massive bodies dwarfed the academy's tallest spires as they poured through the spatial rifts. Wings extended in displays of iridescent membrane that caught and refracted light in hypnotic patterns. Unlike the tiny hatchling Leo had encountered, these were behemoths of legend, their sleek bodies radiating power as they circled above the academy in perfect, predatory formation. The classroom erupted into chaos. Students of every species reacted according to their evolutionary responses to threat. Some froze. Others emitted defensive pheromones or changed color. A few even began the cellular breakdown that preceded emergency metamorphosis. Professor Haltron maintained remarkable composure, mandibles clicking in what Leo recognized as a meditative pattern used by the insectoid species to enhance analytical clarity. Leo remained rooted to his seat, transfixed by the spectacle outside. Among the massive dragons, a smaller form caught his attention. A dragon perhaps 10 times larger than the hatchling he'd fed, but tiny compared to the others. Its scales shimmered with the same azure to emerald shift, and even from this distance, Leo could see its eyes, molten silver orbs that seemed to scan the academy with purpose. With sudden clarity, Leo understood. The injured hatchling and this youngster were the same being. Somehow, in the brief period since their encounter, the dragon had transformed, growing exponentially while summoning others of its kind. And now those piercing silver eyes were systematically searching the academy for him. The realization had barely formed when security officers burst into the classroom, their uniforms bearing the elite insignia of the Alliance Peacekeeping Corps. Leo Martinez, the lead officer, announced, "You are required for immediate questioning. Please come with us." All eyes turned to Leo. For once, the whispers that followed him contained not contempt, but fear, as his classmates collectively processed the implication. The unprecedented dragon incursion somehow connected to the despised human in their midst. Leo stood on trembling legs, his mind racing. As the officers escorted him from the classroom, the silver-eyed dragon outside turned sharply in mid-flight, its gaze locking with Leo's through the polarized windows. In that brief connection, Leo felt rather than heard words form in his mind. Asterisk, the awakening has begun, resonant one. Asterisk, the Academy's detention chamber bore little resemblance to what humans would consider a prison cell. The space was adaptive, constantly reconfiguring its environmental conditions to maintain optimal discomfort for the detainee without causing physical harm. A sophisticated psychological deterrent designed by the Alliance's foremost experts in cross-species incarceration. For Leo, this meant the room maintained a temperature just cold enough to prevent sleep while emitting a barely perceptible high-frequency tone that human ears found particularly grating. The lighting adjusted to always shine directly into his eyes regardless of where he positioned himself. These were calculated irritations meant to wear down resistance rather than break it outright. The Alliance prided itself on its humane detention protocols. After what felt like hours, the seamless wall dissolved to admit Headmaster Verlox, whose amorphous body oozed authority as it solidified into its formal configuration. Behind the headmaster came two security officers and, to Leo's surprise, Professor Haltrin, whose compound eyes darted around the chamber with scientific interest. Mr. Martinez, Headmaster Verlox began, its voice modulator set to an unnecessarily resonant bass that vibrated uncomfortably in Leo's chest cavity. You understand the severity of the situation in which you find yourself? Leo nodded, not trusting his voice. The headmaster's upper pseudopods rippled with what the human had learned to interpret as impatience. Verbal responses only, Mr. Martinez. Academy Guidelines Section 47.3 regarding proper communication protocols. Yes, Headmaster, Leo managed his throat dry. I understand the situation is unusual. Unusual? The headmaster's entire form pulsed dark crimson. A fleet of dragons, a species officially classified as either extinct or exiled, has breached our security systems using transportation methods that violate established physics. They have created a temporal spatial distortion field around the entire academy that has thus far resisted all attempts at communication or neutralization. And your biometric signature shows a 98.7% correlation with the energy patterns they are emitting. The crimson deepened to near black. This is not unusual, Mr. Martinez. This is unprecedented. Leo blinked, processing this information. His biometric signature matched the dragon's? How is that possible? He glanced at Professor Haltrin, whose antennae vibrated in what seemed like barely contained excitement rather than the fear displayed by the headmaster. I don't understand, Leo said honestly. You were observed leaving your assigned lunch area and returning to class 4.7 minutes later than expected. One of the security officers interrupted, reading from a hovering data screen. During this unaccounted-for period, a localized energy spike was recorded in the eastern courtyard vegetation. Precisely 45 minutes after this incident, the first spatial anomalies appeared. I was eating lunch, Leo said, careful to maintain direct eye contact with Headmaster Verlox's optical centers, a sign of respect in the administrator's culture. I saw a small injured creature and I gave it some food. That's all. I didn't know it was a dragon. It was tiny like a lizard. You willingly violated protocol regarding unauthorized biological entities, the headmaster stated, its tone making clear this wasn't a question but an accusation. Yes, Leo admitted. There was no point denying it when the Academy's surveillance systems would have recorded everything, except perhaps the actual encounter which had occurred in one of the few camera blind spots Leo had carefully mapped during his first month at the Academy. Headmaster Verlox's upper body expanded in what passed for a sigh in its species. Mr. Martinez, the Galactic Alliance accepted humans into our community despite significant reservations about your species' historical propensity for destructive curiosity. Your presence at this academy is meant to demonstrate both our commitment to inclusivity in your species' potential for growth beyond its primitive instincts. Yet at the first opportunity, you disregard safety protocols established for the protection of all. The headmaster's form rippled with what might have been disappointment or anger. The question now becomes, are you merely guilty of characteristic human recklessness, or is there a deeper conspiracy at work? Conspiracy? Leo echoed, genuinely confused. The timing is highly suspicious, the security officer said. Humans gain provisional alliance membership, place their first student in our most sensitive educational facility, and suddenly dragons, who have avoided alliance space for millennia, appear in mass. Some on the council are suggesting you might be a deep cover operative for Dragon Remnant forces. Leo almost laughed at the absurdity of the accusation before realizing the seriousness of his situation. I'm 16 years old. I was selected because my test scores were the highest on Earth, not because I'm some kind of spy. Until today, I'd never even seen a dragon except in textbook holograms. And yet, the headmaster continued, these creatures have formed a perimeter around our academy and refuse communication with all officially recognized alliance channels. Their only discernible activity has been repeated scanning patterns focused primarily on this detention area. The headmaster's optical centers fixed on Leo with uncomfortable intensity. They are looking for you, Mr. Martinez. The question is why? Before Leo could formulate a response, Professor Haltran stepped forward, mandibles clicking in the formal pattern requesting permission to speak. The headmaster's form shuddered slightly, a gesture of reluctant acknowledgement. If I may, Headmaster, the professor began, our historical records regarding the Draconis species are notably incomplete. Their energy signatures exhibit quantum entanglement patterns consistent with temporal awareness. It is possible they perceived a potential future event involving Mr. Martinez that our linear temporal perception cannot detect. The insectoid's antennae twitched with scholarly enthusiasm. There are references in pre-Alliance archives to dragons selecting resonance among younger species, individuals whose neurological patterns harmonize with draconic temporal frequencies. The headmaster's body darkened again. Professor Haltran, I remind you that such mythological interpretations were purged from the official curriculum 76 cycles ago as having no scientific basis. The dragons were a territorial species whose refusal to engage with Alliance evolutionary principles led to their voluntary exile. Of course, Headmaster, Professor Haltran responded, compound eyes blinking in the pattern that Leo had come to recognize as the insectoid equivalent of ironic agreement. I merely offer potential explanations based on historical context. Leo glanced between his teacher and the headmaster, suddenly certain there was more to this exchange than academic disagreement. The security officers shifted uncomfortably, their posture suggesting they too sensed undercurrents in the conversation. A sudden tremor shook the detention chamber, causing the environmental controls to flicker briefly. The headmaster's form rippled in alarm as a communication panel materialized beside it. Status report, the administrator demanded. The dragons have changed formation, a voice responded. They appear to be congregating above the central administration tower. Energy readings are fluctuating in patterns we cannot interpret. The Alliance response fleet is still 20 minutes from arrival. The headmaster absorbed this information, its form contracting slightly. Continue monitoring. Enhance containment fields around all sensitive areas. The communication panel dissolved as the administrator turned back to Leo. Mr. Martinez, your continued presence at this academy clearly presents an unacceptable security risk. Once this situation is resolved, arrangements will be made for your immediate return to Earth. Leo felt a strange calm descend over him. After months of isolation and prejudice, the thought of returning home should have brought relief. Instead, he felt a growing certainty that leaving now would mean abandoning something vital, something he didn't yet understand but somehow knew was important not just to him, but perhaps to all of humanity's future in the Alliance. Headmaster, Leo said carefully, I believe I might be able to communicate with them. The administrator's form stiffened. Absolutely not. You will remain in detention until Alliance forces secure the academy. But if they're looking for me, then using you as bait would be strategically unsound. The headmaster interrupted. We know nothing about their intentions or their apparent connection to you. Until we do, standard containment protocols. Another, stronger tremor cut through the room, this one lasting several seconds. The lights dimmed completely before flaring back to life. When they did, Leo gasped. The detention chamber's supposedly impenetrable wall had become transparent, revealing the central courtyard of the academy beyond. More shocking still was what now occupied that courtyard, the silver-eyed dragon, its body now easily the size of small shuttle craft, regarding the detention chamber with unmistakable intent. Impossible, one of the security officers whispered. The structural integrity fields. The dragon's gaze fixed on Leo, and once again, words formed in his mind. Asterisk, they cannot hold you. Resonant one. The time of awakening is now. Asterisk. With those words came a flood of images and sensations, fractured knowledge pouring into Leo's consciousness too quickly to process. His knees buckled as his brain struggled to integrate the sudden influx of information. Through watering eyes, he saw Professor Haltran watching him with keen interest, mandibles working in an unfamiliar pattern that seemed almost like anticipation. It's happening. The professor clicked softly. The convergence of the resonant. Just as the ancient text predicted. The headmaster whirled on the insectoid teacher. What texts? Explain yourself immediately. But Professor Haltron's attention remained fixed on Leo, whose mind was filling with knowledge that no human should possess. The true history of the dragons, their role as guardians of reality streams, and the great betrayal that had led to their disappearance millennia ago. Most importantly, he now understood what the silver-eyed dragon, Salix, its name was Salix, wanted from him. The Academy, Leo gasped as the knowledge crystallized into horrifying clarity. It's built on a massacre site. The founding members of the Alliance, they didn't exile the dragons. They tried to exterminate them. The headmaster's form pulsed with alarm. Security, sedate the human immediately. His mind is being influenced by. Leo never learned what the headmaster believed was influencing him, because at that moment, the detention chamber's transparent wall shattered into molecular fragments. The silver-eyed dragon, Salix, thrust its head into the opening, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. But instead of attacking, it released a sound, a harmonious tone that resonated through Leo's entire being, seemingly attuned to the exact frequency of his nervous system. The security officers collapsed instantly, their neural functions temporarily suspended by the targeted sonic emission. Headmaster Verlox's amorphous form destabilized, losing cohesion and pooling on the floor in a defensive reflex. Only Professor Haltron remained standing, compound eyes reflecting the dragon's silver gaze with what appeared to be reverence. The time has come, Resonant One. Salix spoke directly into Leo's mind. You must complete the circuit that was broken. You must restore what was hidden. Leo stepped forward on unsteady legs, drawn to the dragon by an inexplicable certainty. As he approached, Salix lowered its massive head, bringing one giant silver eye level with the human boy. I don't understand, Leo whispered, though the protest felt hollow even to himself. On some level, he did understand. The fractured knowledge in his mind was rapidly coalescing into a coherent narrative, one that painted the Galactic Alliance in a far darker light than any history he had been taught. You will, the dragon promised, its mental voice both ancient and young. The dragon seal responds only to those whose energy patterns resonate with the original timeline, the one that should have been. You're the first such being we have found in 7,000 years. From behind him, Leo heard Professor Haltron's mandibles click in what sounded like a prayer. The prophecy of renewal, the insectoid breathed. A human child shall awaken what sleeps beneath the false temple. The dragons return when the circle is completed. Leo turned to his teacher in surprise. You knew about this? The professor's antennae quivered. I am a scholar of true histories, young human. My people were archivists before joining the Alliance. We preserved what others sought to destroy, including the knowledge of what really happened to the dragons and why the Alliance fears their return. Enough words, Salix's mental voice commanded. The Alliance fleet approaches. We must act now. Leo Martinez, will you accept the dragon seal and reveal the truth that lies beneath this academy? Leo hesitated only briefly. All his life, he had sought belonging, acceptance. At the academy, he had endured isolation and contempt in hopes of proving humanity's worth. Now he faced a choice: continue pursuing validation from a system built on deception, or embrace a connection with beings who had recognized something in him that transcended species. Yes, he said firmly. I accept. Salix exhaled, releasing a cloud of shimmering particles that coalesced into a small crystalline object hovering before Leo. The dragon seal, a translucent device no larger than his palm, etched with symbols that seemed to shift and change as he observed them. As Leo reached for it, the knowledge in his mind expanded, showing him exactly how to activate the ancient artifact. Wait! Headmaster Verlox's form had partially reconstituted, its voice modulator emitting static-laden protests. You cannot trust them, human. The dragons were deemed too dangerous to coexist with developing species. Their ability to manipulate reality threatens the very fabric of our society. Leo looked down at the partially reformed administrator, seeing fear in its pulsating form. And that's why the Alliance tried to destroy them, isn't it? Not because they were territorial or primitive, but because they could reveal the manipulations of reality that the Alliance itself was performing. He turned the seal in his hands, understanding flowing through him. This academy was built here specifically to contain the residual dragon energy to prevent anyone from discovering the truth. The Alliance brings order, the headmaster insisted, its form rippling weakly. Structure. Progress. The dragons represented chaos, unpredictable temporal shifts that would have prevented our species from evolving along rational paths. You mean paths you controlled, Leo corrected, the truth now evident to him. The founders of the Alliance didn't want guides, they wanted to be gods. And the dragons were the only ones who could have stopped them. Without waiting for further argument, Leo pressed the dragon seal to his chest. The crystalline device phased through his clothing and skin, merging with his sternum in a flash of light that temporarily blinded everyone in the chamber. When vision returned, Leo stood transformed, not physically, but in his bearing. His eyes now swirled with the same mercurial silver as Salix's, and faint scale-like patterns shimmered beneath his skin when he moved. "I see it now," he whispered. "The true history, the suppressed potential, the paths not taken." His voice resonated with newfound authority. "And I see what lies beneath this academy." Leo stepped through the shattered wall and into the courtyard, Salix moving aside to make way. Above them, hundreds of dragons continued their aerial vigil, their massive bodies creating patterns in the sky that seemed to bend the very light around the academy. Professor Haltrin followed Leo, mandibles clicking in excitement, while the partially reformed headmaster could only watch in dismay. As Leo walked to the center of the courtyard, students and faculty emerged from buildings all across the campus, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion to witness what was unfolding. Among them, Leo spotted his former tormentors, their expressions now uncertain as they beheld the human student walking confidently among dragons. Leo knelt and pressed his palm to the immaculate crystal pavement of the courtyard. The dragon seal within his chest pulsed, sending energy spiraling outward in expanding rings that caused the ground to resonate at increasing frequencies. Cracks appeared in the perfect surface, spreading outward from Leo's hand like a web. Beneath the false temple, Leo intoned, echoing Professor Haltrin's earlier words, sleeps the truth of the first betrayal. The courtyard pavement shattered, fragments rising into the air and dissolving into particles of light. Below, revealed for the first time in millennia, lay the true foundation of Galactic Apex Academy, a massive dragon skeleton, its crystalline bones arranged in a perfect circle. The enormous skull, easily the size of a starship, bore evidence of violent destruction. A gaping hole where concentrated energy weapons had pierced its forehead directly through a crystal formation identical to the dragon seal, now embedded in Leo's chest. Gasps of shock rippled through the gathered crowd. Many students fell to their knees, overcome by the revelation that their prestigious academy, the symbol of Alliance enlightenment, had been built atop evidence of what could only be described as genocide. Behold the keeper of timelines. Salix's mental voice projected not just to Leo now, but to everyone present. The last guardian of the first circle, murdered by the founding members of your alliance when she refused to allow them to collapse alternative reality streams for their own advancement. The official Alliance historical archives claim that multiple reality streams are merely theoretical. A faculty member called out, their voice shaking. That parallel development paths are mathematical constructs, not actual possibilities. A convenient belief, Professor Haltrin clicked, stepping forward to address the crowd, when one has eliminated the beings capable of proving otherwise. The Alliance founders chose a singular path of development, one that placed their species at the evolutionary apex and justified their control over all others. The dragons, as guardians of multiple possible futures, stood in opposition to this artificial narrowing of potential. Leo felt the dragon seal pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat as more knowledge flowed into him. The dragons didn't oppose progress, he added, his voice carrying unnaturally across the courtyard. They opposed tyranny disguised as inevitable evolution. They protected the right of all species to find their own path rather than follow the one deemed correct by the Alliance founders. From the edge of the crowd, a familiar melodious voice called out, "If what you're saying is true, human, why would the dragons choose you, a member of one of the least advanced species in the Alliance, as their, what did you call it, resonant?" Leo turned to see Thelix, the Lamidian student who had so often led the mockery against him. For once, the translucent being's light patterns displayed genuine curiosity rather than contempt. Because humans still exist at a temporal crossroads, Salix answered before Leo could speak. Your species has not yet been fully indoctrinated into the singular path of the Alliance. You retain the neural plasticity to perceive multiple possible futures rather than just the one deemed permissible. And because, Leo added with sudden insight, my isolation here made me more receptive. When you're not accepted, you're forced to see things differently, to question assumptions others take for granted. He looked around at his fellow students, meeting their eyes without flinching for the first time. Being the outsider lets you see the boundaries that insiders can't even perceive. A distant rumble interrupted the moment. Above them, the circling dragons shifted formation, their massive bodies aligning to create what appeared to be a defensive perimeter. Salix's head swiveled skyward, silver eyes narrowing. "The Alliance fleet approaches," the dragon announced. "They have detected the awakening of the Guardian's remains and recognized the activation of a dragon seal. They will attempt to reseal the truth and reclaim their narrative." Panic rippled through the crowd. Despite the revelations, these were still children of the Alliance, raised to believe in its protection and guidance. The thought of being caught between the returning dragons and Alliance warships terrified even the most composed among them. Leo felt their fear, but also something else, a tentative curiosity blooming in many minds around him. The revelation of the Academy's true foundation had cracked not just the physical structure, but the ideological certainties upon which these young elite had built their identities. "What happens now?" someone called out. "Are we in danger?" Leo looked to Salix, who lowered its massive head to meet his gaze directly. In that connection flowed not just knowledge, but a question, an offering of choice rather than a command. Leo understood that whatever happened next would be his decision, not merely the fulfillment of draconic plans. The realization struck him with unexpected force. The dragons, for all their power, were not seeking to impose their will. Unlike the Alliance founders, they offered perspective without demanding compliance. They showed truth but left judgment to those who received it. This, perhaps more than the physical evidence beneath the Academy, demonstrated the fundamental difference in philosophy between the dragons and those who had sought to eradicate them. Leo turned to address the assembled students and faculty. No one is in danger, at least not from the dragons. He gestured to the massive skeleton below them. They could have sought vengeance millennia ago. Instead, they withdrew, waiting for the moment when the Alliance might be ready to confront its founding deception. And is that moment now? Professor Haltran asked, compound eyes reflecting the swirling energies that continued to rise from the Guardian's remains. Leo nodded, decision crystallizing within him. "Yes, because I choose to make it now." He raised his voice to ensure everyone could hear. "I'm not here to destroy the Alliance or this Academy. I'm here to restore what was lost, the awareness of possibility. The knowledge that the path we're on is a choice, not an inevitability." With those words, Leo placed both hands on the Guardian's crystal-shattered skull. The dragon seal in his chest flared with blinding intensity, creating a connection between the human boy and the ancient remains. Energy surged through Leo, using him as a conduit to repair what had been broken millennia ago. The crystal formation on the Guardian's skull began to regenerate, its fractured structure knitting together as Leo channeled the combined power of all the dragons circling above. The process was excruciating. Leo's human body strained to contain energies never meant for his species. But he endured, driven by the absolute certainty that this moment represented a fulcrum point in history. Not just his history or humanity's, but that of the entire galactic community. As the crystal in the Guardian skull fully reformed, a pulse of energy exploded outward, passing harmlessly through organic beings, but interacting with the very fabric of reality around them. The sky above the Academy shifted, rippling like disturbed water before settling into a subtly different configuration. The stars themselves seemed to realign, and for a brief moment, every person present could perceive what the dragons always saw. Not a single timeline, but multiple possible realities existing simultaneously, separated only by the thinnest of veils. The moment passed quickly. The human mind not evolved to maintain such perception, but the effect remained. Around the courtyard, students and faculty stood in stunned silence, their understanding of reality fundamentally altered. What had been abstract theory was now lived experience. The awareness that reality itself was neither singular nor fixed, but a tapestry of possibilities. In the distance, the approaching Alliance fleet became visible, a constellation of warships whose weapons could reduce the Academy to atoms. Leo felt fear ripple through the crowd, but also sensed something new emanating from Salix and the circling dragons. Not aggression, but a calm readiness. They formed a protective barrier around the Academy, their bodies generating a field that would absorb rather than deflect any attack. "They will not fire," Leo announced with certainty born of his connection to the Dragon Seal. "Not when they see what we've awakened." As if in response to his words, the Guardian's remains began to glow with increasing intensity. The massive skeleton rose from its burial place, suspended in midair as energy coursed through its crystalline bones. The sight was both terrifying and beautiful. The murdered ancient returning not as an agent of vengeance, but as living history, a testament to what had been hidden. "Attention, unauthorized vessels." A communication burst from the lead Alliance warship echoed across the Academy grounds. "You have violated Sovereign Alliance space and interfered with a protected educational facility. Power down all energy fields and surrender the human instigator immediately, or we will be forced to take decisive action." Before Leo could respond, Professor Haltrin stepped forward, mandibles forming the patterns of an ancient communication protocol. "Alliance Command, this is Faculty Archivist Haltrin. I formally invoke Statute 7.3 of the Alliance Charter, the right of historical revelation. What has been discovered here falls under the protected category of foundational documentation. Any attempt to suppress this evidence constitutes a direct violation of the Charter's primary directive." The professor's invocation created a momentary pause in the Alliance's advance. Leo glanced at his teacher with newfound respect, understanding now that the insectoid's position at the Academy had likely been part of a longer game, a patient attempt to uncover and protect the very truth they had now exposed. "The professor is correct," Leo added, his voice carrying to the Alliance ships through the Dragon's amplification. "By your own laws, what lies beneath this Academy cannot be reburied or destroyed. The Guardian's remains are living testimony to the founding act of your Alliance. Testimony your own Charter protects." A tense silence followed. Leo could almost feel the calculations running through the minds of the Alliance commanders. The political implications of attacking an educational facility populated by the children of influential families versus the danger of allowing the truth about the dragons to spread throughout the Alliance. Finally, a different voice responded from the fleet. "This is High Commander Teverick of the Alliance Oversight Council. We are initiating an emergency investigation into the discoveries at Galactic Apex Academy. All students and faculty are to remain in place pending verification procedures. The dragons, A pause, as though the commander could barely bring themselves to acknowledge directly communicating with the supposedly extinct species. The dragons will maintain their current perimeter, but advance no further into Alliance space until diplomatic channels can be established. Leo felt a wave of relief mixed with triumph. Not victory. He understood enough now to know this was merely the first step in what would likely be a lengthy and difficult process of reconciliation, but an opening. A chance for truth rather than obliteration. Salix lowered its massive head to Leo's level once more. You have done what none thought possible, Resonant One. You have created space for dialogue where once there was only denial. What happens now? Leo asked, suddenly aware of how exhausted his body felt after channeling the draconic energies. Now the real work begins, the dragon replied, silver eyes swirling with ancient patience. The Alliance must confront its founding deception, and your species must find its place in a more complex reality than the one they were permitted to perceive. Around them, the students and faculty of the Academy were beginning to recover from their initial shock. Questions flew from every direction. Are there really multiple timelines? Why did our history text say the dragons chose exile? Does this mean our entire understanding of Alliance formation is false? Professor Haltran clicked their mandibles for attention. Students, what we have witnessed today will inevitably change many aspects of your education going forward. I suggest you document your observations and questions. You are witnessing a pivotal moment in Alliance history. From the edge of the gathered crowd, Felix the Lamidian stepped forward, their translucent skin pulsing with a pattern Leo had never seen before, one that conveyed respectful uncertainty rather than arrogant certainty. Human, Leo, they corrected themselves. Does this mean you'll be leaving the Academy now? Going with the dragons? The question caught Leo by surprise. In the midst of everything, he hadn't considered what would happen after this confrontation. Would the dragons expect him to leave with them? Would the Alliance even permit him to stay at the Academy after what he'd done? Salix seemed to sense his confusion. The choice is yours, Resonant One. The Dragon Seal has bonded with you, but it does not command you. We offer connection, not control. Leo looked around at the Academy that had been the site of so much isolation and pain for him, yet now stood revealed as something far more significant than merely a school. The Guardian's remains continued to hover above the shattered courtyard, a physical reminder that buried truths had a way of eventually rising to the surface. I think, Leo said carefully, I should stay, at least for now. He addressed not just Salix, but all those gathered. Someone needs to help translate between worlds that have been separated for millennia. Someone needs to help build something new from this revelation. He touched the dragon seal in his chest, feeling its warm resonance with his heartbeat. Besides, I think I've finally found where I belong. In the days that followed, Galactic Apex Academy was transformed from an educational facility to the center of a diplomatic revolution. Alliance investigators arrived to document the Guardian's remains, while Dragon representatives, smaller ones capable of fitting within the Academy buildings, began the process of sharing their long-suppressed history with Alliance scholars. Leo found himself in an entirely new position, neither outsider nor fully accepted, but something unprecedented, a bridge between species. The Dragon Seal gave him access to knowledge no other human possessed, while his humanity allowed him to translate that knowledge into terms the Alliance could begin to comprehend. His fellow students regarded him with a complicated mixture of awe, uncertainty, and newfound respect. The isolation he had endured transformed almost overnight into an equally overwhelming level of attention. Everyone wanted to speak with the human who awakened the dragons, to understand how he had been chosen and what it might mean for their own futures. Even Felix and their Lamidian friends approached Leo with overtures of friendship, awkward at first, but increasingly genuine as they worked together to document the unfolding changes at the Academy. 1 month after what was now being called the Revelation, Leo sat with Professor Haltrin in the eastern courtyard, his former sanctuary that had become the unofficial meeting place for the newly formed Dragon Alliance Dialogue Committee. The Alliance Council is still resistant to full disclosure. The professor clicked, antennae twitching with mild frustration. They wish to control the narrative, present the original suppression of dragons as a misunderstanding rather than deliberate genocide. Leo nodded, no longer surprised by the lengths to which power would go to preserve itself. But they can't put the knowledge back in a box. Too many witnessed the truth firsthand, and the dragons won't allow another distortion of history. Indeed, the professor agreed, which is why your role becomes increasingly important. You are neither dragon nor typical Alliance citizen. You represent the possibility of genuine new perspective. Leo ran his fingers across his book, the same biodiversity encyclopedia he had clutched so tightly on that fateful day. It seemed like a lifetime ago now. I never thought my interest in biology would lead to this. I just wanted to survive the Academy and prove humans belonged in the Alliance. And now you will help reshape what that alliance becomes, Professor Haltrin observed. A far more significant contribution than merely fitting into an existing structure. Their conversation was interrupted as Salix landed in the courtyard, its form now adjusted to a size that allowed it to move comfortably among the Academy buildings. The dragon had become Leo's most constant companion, helping him navigate both the political complexities of the situation and his growing connection to the Dragon Seal. The first Earth representatives have arrived, Salix announced, silver eyes swirling with interest. They are quite agitated by the developments. Leo laughed. I can imagine. Humanity barely had time to adjust to being the Alliance's most junior member before discovering the entire cosmic order is undergoing revision. He stood, straightening his new uniform, no longer the standard Academy attire, but a specially designed outfit that acknowledged his unique status. As he prepared to meet his fellow humans and help them understand the new reality they had all entered, a thought occurred to him. Salix, he asked, how many others like me have there been? How many resonants have the dragons found throughout history? The dragon's silver eyes fixed on Leo with an intensity that still sometimes took his breath away. None, Salix replied simply. Until you. But the prophecies Professor Haltrin mentioned were hopes, not certainties, the dragon explained. For 7,000 years, we searched for one whose mind could perceive multiple realities, whose spirit could withstand the dragon's seal, whose heart would choose truth over belonging. The dragon's head tilted slightly. We had begun to believe such a being might never emerge. The weight of this revelation settled on Leo's shoulders, not as a burden, but as a clarification. He had spent so long believing his difference was a weakness, his isolation a punishment. Now he understood that the very qualities that had made him an outsider had also made him uniquely suited to bridge worlds that had forgotten how to communicate. Well, Leo said, smiling as he gestured toward the arrival platform where the Earth delegation waited, let's go make history, all possible versions of it. As they walked together, human boy and ancient dragon, toward a future neither Alliance architects nor Earth's leaders had ever imagined possible, Leo felt the dragon's seal pulse in rhythm with his heart. The dragons circling high above the Academy cast shifting patterns of light and shadow across the grounds, a constant reminder that reality was far more varied, complex, and wonderful than anyone had been permitted to believe. The true education, Leo realized, was just beginning, not just for him but for all of them. In the distance, through a spatial rift maintained by the dragons, the stars shimmered with possibilities that had always existed but had been hidden from view. Now they were visible to any who chose to truly see.